Good afternoon. This week we were supposed to read 3 essays for our assignment, and they're all in chapter 1. The first essay that we read was the case study for H.B. Fuller in Honduras, Street Children and Substance Abuse. And this article goes on and deals with the problem that Honduran kids were having at the time in the 80s of sniffing resistol, which was a adhesive product developed manufactured by H.B. Fuller and Cativo in Honduras, and how those kids were being labeled as resistoleros, and obviously no company wants to be linked their image to a substance abuse like that, especially when some kids as young as 5 were getting addicted to the resistol, which sniffing it can cause a lot of brain damage. And the article goes on and how the company was dealing with it, and at first the social activists wanted the company to change its product by adding olive mustard, and then the vice president for Cativo, Beto, went on and did some research and found out that this oil mustard was actually very cancerogen. So he went on the route that education was the best approach to have kids to stop sniffing the glue instead of changing the product itself. But the headquarters in the US, they weren't really taking any action until 2 stockholders went on and wrote letters to the company addressing the problem, so that the H.B. Fuller in the US could actually go into Honduras and do something more than just sit back and wait for Cativo in Honduras to do its job of trying to manage the situation. The second part was that we had to read was the article by Milton Friedman, and it's titled "The Social Responsibility of Business is to Increase Its Profits." Friedman goes and he simply what he does is he simply states that business and ethics are 2 separate things, like they don't go together. That business executives, they should solely act on the best interest of the owners and stockholders, which obviously is to increase the organization's profits and increasing the owners and stockholders' profits as well. He says that the business is an artificial person, and as an artificial person, it doesn't have any social responsibility, and the business executive is solely an agent of the owners and stockholders. So he just have to work to increase the organization profits. Friedman does not say that companies should engage in deception or fraud to maximize their profits. He says that business, they should abide by any laws and regulations, and that if the laws and if those laws and regulations mandate that organizations not engage in social responsible actions, but if they mandate the corporations to engage in pollution control, hiring minorities, all those social responsible actions, the business executive should do just as much as the laws and regulations require, but they don't necessarily have to do more just to please social activists or anyone else, because this is probably not gonna bring any revenue to the company. It's not going to increase its profits on the short or long run. If you apply his view to the case that we studied, H.B. Fuller in Honduras, the Cativo chemical, the subsidiary of H.B. Fuller in Honduras, they wouldn't have to take any action to change the product resistol or engage in any social responsible activity in order to prevent kids from sniffing the glue. This inaction toward the problem would only change if, and as it did, stockholders started to question H.B. Fuller directly, why the company was not taking action to help the kids in Honduras and try to prevent or create programs or whatever to prevent those kids from start to sniffing the glue. So when stockholders decided to pressure, that's when H.B. Fuller went on and took a more incisive action towards the problem. Then the third part that we had to read was the essay from Edward Freeman, and Freeman defends the business models that he calls managing for stockholders. It goes in the complete opposite of what Friedman says, and in his view, not only the shareholders should be taken in consideration when managers are taking business decisions, but also the other stockholders such as employees, communities, customers, suppliers, or anybody that is impacted by a organization should be counted, should be equated in the decision that's going to be made. Freeman goes to argue that this should be the case because the dominant model of business, which was what Friedman defended, it's no longer useful in this century, because the dominant business model is resistant to change, and it only puts the interest of the shareholders above everyone else, and that change should only occur if these shareholders are unhappy, for example, losing money. He also says that the dominant model is not consistent with current laws, because laws have evolved to protect all stakeholders and not just the main shareholders. And also the last thing that Freeman goes on to say is that the dominant model is not consistent with the basic ethics, because the dominant model simply states that business ethics are two separate things. In the case study, when applying this when applying Freeman's view to the case study, Beto, which was the vice president for Cativo, he was trying to manage the business not only for the shareholders but also for the stakeholders of H.B. Fuller and Cativo. He was managing for stakeholders because even before the chairman of H.B. Fuller received the letters from their stockholders, he was trying to find ways to help the street children with their addiction, by lobbying with the government, and by lobbying that the government should get involved alongside with the company in creation of education and programs to help current users and prevent younger ones from using the resistol for sniffing. Obviously, both theories, they have pros and cons. Friedman's defend that the company has to create profits to its shareholders while abiding by laws and regulations. So they're not by any means not required to follow the law and regulations, but they do not need to do more than that, more than what is legally required. Freeman goes on the opposite route and says that not only shareholders matters, but everyone who is affected by a business decision or many business decisions of an organization should be taken into consideration, thus creating value for both stakeholders and not only shareholders. In my opinion, managers and business owners, they should take a balanced approach, if that's even possible, when making decisions, because yes, a manager will want to maximize the profits and shareholder value, but doing that at the expense of other stakeholders, it's on the long run, especially in today's world, is not going to be a good approach, because in today's world, with with the with the fast communication that we have and easy access of information, customers can easily start boycotting a certain brand of a product or a company for whatever unethical behavior these customers feel the company or the managers are behaving. Another example is that a stakeholder group could hurt the company's image or the employees, because they can negatively talk about how poor working conditions they have, a lack of benefits, if the company doesn't hire minorities, if the company doesn't hire people with disabilities. So this negative information can reach the public, and then the public will start boycotting or could start negatively talking about the company, thus affecting the profits of that company. Yes, top level managers should maximize shareholder profits, but they should also keep an eye of what's going on around the world and how the business decisions that they're making are affecting people directly or indirectly, to avoid that the stockholders could hurt the company's image, which will ultimately decrease shareholder value. Thank you very much, and this was my discussion for the first week of assignments.